All right, we're back.
Hello, everyone. Back with David Fincher Vengeance. Time for part 2. Let's get cruising.
Yeah,
So we go ahead.
we left off with the Social Network. We
What
didn't
if
we didn't quite talk about how obviously prophetic it ended up being, but
No, we did not. It came out in 2010.
yes.
Good God, still marvel at that. Just for how nascent Facebook was at the time for a lot of people. It was definitely still in its earlier stages, and yeah, people just kept going with it, just kept cruising. Still today.
I was gonna say the company is as big as it's ever been. I mean, they tried to rebrand, and they've constantly been trying to get the next big thing, and failing repeatedly. But this movie does a really good job of sort of highlighting the type of person that Zuckerberg is, and furthermore, how he lucked into this. That's the whole point of the court cases, is that, you know, he was the most committed to building this thing, to building Facebook into a huge company.
Yeah.
But he was not the one who made it.
Right.
So even though he did 2 days of coding or whatever, primarily he took the business advice of his friend and the idea of the Winklevoss boys. Yeah, and so he just took other smarter people's ideas and made billions off of them. The Winklevoss twins, their appearance on that one Tim Dillon episode where they're at a Bitcoin conference, that is some goods with Jake Paul.
Yes.
Just an odd group of people on a stage. Tim Dillon, the Winklevoss twins, Jake Paul, and Dillon's then producer, Ben Avery. Where Dillon is just making jokes yeah, I can see that these people are just going to rush the stage and kill us all and put our heads on spikes or whatever.
He's literally saying that live, and everyone else there is trying to also make jokes, and he's just 5 dimensions deeper than each of them.
But yeah, the Winklevosses are back. Is my point in saying that they're big into crypto and promoting crypto now.
Right.
I wonder what that other guy's up to.
Ben Avery.
No, the guy from the Social Network. The Edward guy, the guy that Andrew Garfield plays. I imagine
I'm sure he
owns all the water in Oklahoma or something funny.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm sure he started 7 other businesses after that. Yeah. So what chronologically comes next after the Social Network?
The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Right.
So Social Network came out in 2010. Big success, made money, lots of awards. Pretty much solidified Fincher as a great director, would reliably get any movie he wanted. Which makes sort of his last, the 2010s work that he did, even more interesting. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo feels obviously very similar to work he's done before, not only because of its nature of being a mystery, which is going to play well into Gone Girl, which we might as well talk about Gone Girl after this one rather than going chronologically, and we can talk about the TV stuff after.
You don't want to talk about Justin Timberlake featuring Jay-Z suit and tie music video?
David Fincher is a fine director of music videos. I personally don't get that much out of them.
I know. This is primarily a film podcast, not a music video podcast.
I
Which
mean, we
would
can talk about some music videos and how some music videos are good, but like I don't care about music videos when you can make a 3-hour music video. So a 3-minute music, like the best 3-minute music video,
pales in
like,
comparison with. Is that
well,
what you're
like
gonna say?
in a way, like I just prefer the movie medium to the music one. I mean, a great album is as good a piece of art as any. Um, I've not been that big a fan of a lot of the visual albums that have come out, though.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's just something. There's been an inherent disconnect between musical artists and filmmakers in their ability to collaborate together on bigger projects. So that, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm highly critical of musicals as a whole. Obviously, musicals as a genre are very different from music videos, which were popularized by, like, MTV and um, sort of coming through the 80s and into the 90s, peaking in popularity with stuff like grunge
It
and
is
pittering
funny.
out.
It is funny now how like I can't even remember the last music video that I've seen the whole way through. Whereas like 12 to 15 years ago, I could definitely tell you like my favorite music videos. And that may be more of a symptom of me getting older, but I think it's more of one where like every single song that comes out now has its own music video, and they're like less like they're all trying to be like iconic, but then they end up just all being the same or what have you. Like it's just getting like lost in the noise because there's so much content coming out now.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably list a few dozen music videos I really enjoy just from the last 10 years.
Hmm.
Um, in large part, I mean, it just depends on the artist. Like some artists consistently put out good music videos that amplify the song, like the
Hmm.
existing work already. Some take away from it, and some are simply there to promote the brand of the artist.
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of the music videos get bogged down in the genre that they're released in. So, a lot of rap, and then furthermore, hip hop videos end up being very formulaic and samey, where
Oh
the
yeah.
only difference is the actual artist highlighted in them, but the backgrounds, are basically interchangeable, where all that matters is the city it's filmed in. God, rock music videos have just been so bad for like 40 years. I don't even know if they were good before that because I just don't know what they were before that, but they have been consistently awful. Um, just because, a lot of these rock stars have never figured out how to do anything other than like, all right, then show us playing our instruments real good.
Hmm. That's
Country
the
videos
formula.
are horrifically bad. I mean, there's some that come out and they're just fascinating videos that have nothing to do with the music.
Speaking of 12 years ago, just because I don't want to go on too big of a tangent on music videos,
I was
12
gonna say
years
we
ago
could
is
talk
when
about Fincher's music videos specifically. I don't know
I
how.
don't want to. I just mentioned it. 12 years ago is when The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the American version, came out by David Fincher. The Swedish version came out in 2010 or 2009. Or did it come out after?
No, it came out before.
You said that um well, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the Swedish one came out in 2009. Um oh shit. Did they released like the first two books together, like back to back? The Swedish one, it looks like. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and then The Girl Who Played with Fire both came out in 2009.
I don't understand what you're asking or saying.
They came out the same year.
The The Girl with the
Swedish
Dragon
one.
Tattoo book came out in 2005. And then the
Yeah.
sequel 2006, and the final in the trilogy was 2007.
The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie, The Girl Who Played with Fire movie, both Swedish versions were released in the same year,
Yeah, they
2009.
shot it as one movie.
Got it.
Shot all three movies as one movie and released them as three. The only reason they did that is because the books became an international hit after all three books were out. So they translated them into English all at the same time, and then they all became huge hits because they were not internationally popular until they released them all into English, and then everyone went crazy, both because of the dark subject material and the fact that they're lengthy and include all of these seemingly worthless details that made a lot of readers feel smart for, understanding it or getting into it.
Good God. The actor who plays Michael Blomkvist, his name is Michael Nyquist.
Yeah. Yeah, the dude from John Wick and other roles. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen the Swedish versions because I watched all three of them, probably like 7 or 8 years ago.
I think I saw the first two. I don't think I saw the final one. Yeah, I remember liking it. Definitely. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the books, each one gets worse than the last. So by the third, the girl that kicked the hornet's nest or whatever the hell it's called, that one is starting to be closer to John Grisham than the original Stieg Larsson.
Yeah, for sure.
It should be noted that just this background is fascinating of these novels because Stieg Larsson died before any of them were published. So he died, and then they published a borderline unedited version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yes.
And then the sequel, and then the sequel to the sequel. Since then, they've released multiple other horrific sequels in the series because it's too big not to make money off of it.
And
But those ones are like not even written by Larson. They're just, it's like the Silmarillion. They just cobbled together notes and they're like, it's a hidden book of Stieg Larsson.
Yeah. Yeah, they just slap his name on there because money. Yeah, they're enjoyable. Enjoyable books, I would say, but yeah, there's a diminishing return on each that comes after it. Back to David Fincher's version of it. We have Daniel Craig as Michael Blomkvist and Rooney Mara as Lisbeth Salander, and a pretty wild cast that follows as well. Like you have Christopher Plummer, Stellan Skarsgård, Robin Wright, Yorick von Wageningen, Steven Berkoff.
Oh, von Wageningen is in it.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the bad man.
Yeah.
The rapist pig guy.
Yes. It's just a funny name.
Yorick von Wageningen.
Yeah, but
Wageningen. What a fuck up name.
So the key differences between Fincher's and the Swedish version is that the Swedish one shows more violence, right? And Fincher's shows more of the rape. I believe.
Yes.
I only saw each of them once, and I'm pretty sure I saw them like I watched one night and then I watched the next. Like I watched the other version the next night.
Yeah, I mean, if you watched both without a careful eye, you would think that there wasn't a big difference between the two.
For sure.
Because the Swedish version is definitely a solid movie that has a lot of the same dark-looking cinematography and very acute sense of editing that helps ratchet up the tension slowly throughout the movie, building to the horrific reveals and gross sex acts. But I think the Fincher version is by far the definitive version. It's
Yeah,
so much better at hiding information from you and then unloading it all at once, pretty much right after the bad stuff happens to Lisbeth.
instead of referring to it as the Swedish version, it's Niels Arden Oplev's version. Um, Slightly nicer way of referring to that instead of just the Swedes, those Swedes, they're doing things.
Well, it's funny that that's the Swedish version's the original, but they didn't get goddamn Stellan Skarsgård's like the Swedish actor into
Right,
that movie.
right.
Meanwhile, he is the villain in the American version, possibly because um, by that point, Skarsgård might not have been doing as many like Swedish films. I don't really know, but I don't know. It's just funny. Like he's the guy I think of when I think of like Swedish actors. Oh, the Skarsgårds.
I think that's another reason why I get them confused is because Skarsgård is in it, and then I'm like, wait, but this isn't the Swedish one. uh, yeah. But anyway, back to the like violence shown in each of them. The Swedish version, Oplev's version, um, is disturbing because of its violence, and Fincher's is disturbing because of its like rape that it shows, and Fincher's is more disturbing because of that. Because most people are bothered by violence, obviously on screen, you'd say, but we're also we're more used to that. Like we have a certain level of I can't use my words right now, but yeah, just like people are more used to seeing violence on screens and in media, whereas obviously rape is not shown as often and is demonstrably I don't want to say it's worse, but it's obviously like more bothersome, is what I'm getting at. And Fincher uses the text and what is in the text to really emphasize that and drive that home to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the Fincher version is like a very close adaptation to the book. Like it
Mhm.
looks very similar to the book. Um, Jeff Cronenweth is the cinematographer, which has worked with Fincher on a number of movies.
Mhm.
I think a combination of the guy who adapted the book for Fincher and Cronenweth, um, they really brought a certain view of Sweden to like a version of Sweden that is much different than what you get in the Swedish version. Um, because that original Swedish version of the movie, I already forgot the guy's name because it's
Oplev.
a nonsense Swedish name.
Oh.
Oplev's version is so much darker, and it has sort of a grimy portrayal of Sweden.
Yeah.
And even on the island they go to where Hammerschmidt or whatever his name is lives, Henrik Wegner. Uh, he I have to make these jokes because, like, to be clear, outside of all of the graphic sexual violence in the movie, there's also a bunch of Nazis and torture and anti-Semitism. So it's an incredibly dark movie,
Yes.
and novel. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of brightness in the Fincher version that is used in conjunction with the editing that makes this movie even creepier because there's an impending sense of dread through the whole thing that doesn't get unloaded until you're like an hour and a half into the movie. Like even after the blowjob and the rape and then the revenge rape, which are all very extreme, difficult to watch scenes.
Yes.
And then you get to her uncovering this increasingly bizarre and perverted series of sadistic murders. Which then she teams up with Bloomquist, and they solve it, and Stellan Skarsgård, it turns out, is the guy, and then they go and they find that there was a switch with some people and the body double, and everyone lives happily ever after, other than the guy who gets blowed up.
Oh,
Because Stellan
yeah,
Skarsgård gets exploded like
and also
3/4 of the way into the movie.
I mean, everyone does not live happily ever after because of the, rape that has happened.
Salander wasn't having fun before that, so
No. Yeah, Fincher, I mean, we talked about this before, but like his choice in films and stories to take on, he has a similar thread throughout all of them.
not Benjamin Button.
No, that's a Zemeckis film. And and
I'm just thinking of I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Yes,
Directed by
exactly.
Robert Zemeckis.
I broke down almost in tears of laughter when I saw that in that movie. Yeah, no, but there is a similar thread between the different stories that he takes on. I mean, even in a movie such as the Social Network, which is, there's no dark, seedy like violence that's happening throughout, but the meta narrative is that there is seedy people out there making these deals or like cornering the market on something that's just gonna fuck over like millions of people in the future simply because of money and fame, in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
Fincher does an expert job of showing that, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, here's this biopic of Zuck. Yeah. So
Well, I think so. Something about the Social Network, similar to this movie, where it fills you with like impending dread. Like it feels like something bad will happen. And it's this perfect combination of like the Reznor and Ross score, the blocking choices, like just the framing of the actors, like keeping them close to the edge of the frame so it feels claustrophobic, camera movements that always follow the actors themselves, sound design where you hear just the right amount of like crinkling or like a pen clicking to
oh
sort of
yeah.
get you in their sense of mood. And then the way that all gets edited together sort of flawlessly, where you have to be lockstep with them. And so the Social Network is like almost like a suspense thriller or horror movie, despite the fact, like you said, that it's just about Mr. Zuck, you know, bibbity boppeting his way through a trial where he gets to Zuck his all those people for all that money. Which is crazy that you can use that style in a biopic functionally.
Yeah.
And then the very next year go and use it in this extremist violent mystery story and have it, accomplish the same effect. It's just another example of Fincher at the top of his game. At like just a perfect pairing of the material. And before we move on to Gone Girl, I want to say, just like this weird thing I noticed having watched The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo earlier this week. The horrible scene in question, the rape scene, is actually shot really similarly to the scene in Gone Girl, where
With
she
the throat
kills.
slitting.
Yes.
Interesting.
Obviously, they go very different directions.
Yeah. One which
But
is the female conquering. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the revenge aspect of both is maybe the most questionable aspect of the content, but I don't think Fincher's questioning the content. He's just demanding that you watch it and sit through it, make up your mind later.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes that scene in Gone Girl so effective, because if you had watched this movie first, you wouldn't have expected it. You would expect the same result, where she's being forced into a situation she doesn't want to be in, and it's another example of her powerlessness in her story that echoes this one. But then the twist is no, she has all the power, and we get that gruesome scene.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention that because I thought of it. I was like, this is shot really similarly, but has that flip.
Definitely would have never made that connection, only because I've seen each movie once. You want to go to his TV shows after we finish Gone Girl?
Yeah, because Gone Girl is in the same vein as The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, whereas I think the TV shows highlight a part of Fincher that's very different. That's definitely worth talking about. But um, Gone Girl, I mean, it's just another murder mystery, but um, the novel is so much more sensationalized, not in the sense that it's like a chase movie, because it almost feels like it could turn into a chase movie at any time.
Gone Girl?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because like once the first twist is dropped on you, you're like, oh, is this a chase movie now? Um, but instead, it just circles back to where it began. And but yeah, have you read this novel?
Gone Girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this novel. This is one of my favorite books. I read it in one night or one day and night in college. Like I stayed up all night just reading it because I couldn't stop. Paid for it in the morning with an 8 a.m., but it was worth staying up till 2, 3 to finish it.
So how similar is the act? Because I haven't read the novel.
It's tough because this novel does the Game of Thrones thing where it's like from each character's perspective, each chapter is.
Back and
So
forth.
yeah. So
Oh.
that's different. Like absolutely different.
So you know that what's her name? Amy
Yes.
Dunn is alive the whole time.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You know, well, I should say that you do like Gillian Flynn is really creative with like hiding, like she puts the chapters in the correct order to the point where you're in suspense. Like you're left in suspense the whole time and you're not sure if she's alive, and then all of a sudden she pops up, and then like then she pushes back, and then it's still like from Nick's perspective. So you're left guessing like the whole time up until the end, basically.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's just very thrilling, that way of telling it, and I think that's a really creative way of telling a story. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a it can turn into a gimmick real fast from other stories, and this book doesn't use it in a gimmicky way, I would say. I would have to reread it to accurately describe that, but I think
Gotcha.
it can be done really, really well, and I think this is kind of like that type of style at the top of the game, honestly. As far as like enjoyable reads, this book is in like my top 10, top 20, just because you can just breeze through it, and the content it is, yeah, just keeps you going. The movie follows the plot relatively closely. There are a few derivations. I think the throat slitting, I don't think that's in the book, but I
Oh,
could
like
be wrong.
instead she just returns back to the town without having that rendezvous with. No, it says
It
that she
happens
kills him, but
differently. It
okay, it's
Yeah,
it's not okay.
it's not while he's alive.
Gotcha.
In the
Okay.
book, she drugs the guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the plot is um this movie's kind of a weird comedy. Like visually, it reminds me a lot of Prisoners.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Especially with like the media and like all of the um it's not um procedural per se from like the cops perspective, but there's a lot of procedural things that are happening off camera.
yes, yeah, yeah, and that all influences the way that Nick, played by Ben Affleck, is sort of dragged through the story because everything is just sort of happening to him around him as his life falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
The plot of the movie, Ben Affleck is accused of murdering his wife, Rosamund Pike, because she disappears, and then there's a bunch of evidence that he murdered her. The twist is that she's not dead. She's been alive the whole time. The movie tricks you by having her diary entries crop up as an unreliable narrator. So then she pops up alive in a completely different part of the country, and then like some bad stuff happens to her where she's like attacked by hillbillies or something weird. And then she goes and stays with her friend Neil Patrick Harris. And then it's basically like there's this like Nick Ben Affleck is at home trying to like get the press back on his side uh and failing, and then at some point he finally is like convincing people that he didn't do it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's her seeing that in the interview that makes her go, "Oh, I do kind of want to be with him because he's a goddamn liar just like me." Because
Yeah.
the reveal is that she's like a sociopathic maniac.
Yes.
Uh, so then she kills Neil Patrick Harris, goes home with him, and he's like, "What the fuck? I know that you're a monster." And she's like, "What are you gonna do about it?" And then the movie ends.
Yeah, the movie and the book both end where you're you're definitely not supposed to like either of them, but you kind of like ping pong back and forth between like, wait, but okay, I feel bad for Nick, but also I feel bad for Amy, but also what the fuck? This lady has just been like these bad things have been happening, but then she just uses it to her advantage like every single time, and then doubles and triples and quadruples down to commit even crazier acts, and then chain herself to Nick and
Yeah,
chain him to her, and then it ends with both of them being like, it's kind of similar to Succession actually in some ways at the end. Now that I think about it, just less um you get less in the heads of the characters because it's not grounded in a book, but where they're like tied together and they don't necessarily want to be there, but they're just like, well, this is how it is.
yeah. I would say Nick is kind of a run of the mill douchebag that's unlikable, whereas Amy is just like a sociopathic serial killer.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
like you wouldn't ever want to root for Nick, but Amy is just like so much worse. And then you kind of just at the like the darkness at the end is basically that Nick is way less intelligent than Amy is, and so he's just doomed to a life controlled by this maniac.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it has the same hallmarks of the last few movies we discussed. Great editing, cinematography that always it just leaves you with this closed in feeling. Um,
I believe it also starts and ends in the same way, where she's like laying her head on his lap or like laying her head down on like a chair or something and looking up at him.
yeah,
There's
I
like an
think it.
iconic shot
Yeah, I
of
think
that.
she's in the bath at the end or something.
Well, she gives him like this type of look um that's meant to look kind of like endearing at the beginning, and then at the end it looks like she's endearing, but you know that she's just like calculating like, if you misstep, like I'm going to put you in a spider's web and everything is going to come crashing down and your entrails will be leaked out on live TV.
Yeah,
One of the funniest parts of this movie with Fincher is that the reason why he cast Ben Affleck is because he like was looking for someone who who like I believe he said something like, "Oh, here's what he said: You cast movies based on critical scenes. So in Gone Girl, there's a smile the guy has to give when the local press asks him to stand next to a poster of
Yeah.
his missing wife. I flipped through Google Images and I found about 50 shots of Affleck giving that same smile in public. So that's why I cast him." Which is amazing. And I think you talked about it. I believe you talked about it on air the last time, but how um, Affleck and Ruffalo are like less enthused with Fincher because he like asks for so many different shots of the scene.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that is the it's more forgivable in Ruffalo's, at least in my mind, for Ruffalo because he's just an actor. Ben Affleck it was like a acclaimed director by this point,
Yeah.
so the fact that he is like, I'm better than you, David Fincher. I know what to do. You don't need to shoot this scene 50 times. It's like, no, fuck you, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ben Affleck's career has also just been like up and down, up and down, up and
Oh
down, up
yeah.
and down. Because I mean, he's been through the whole thing, like high profile marriages, divorces, gambling addiction, alcoholism, great movies, bad movies, both as a writer and a director and an actor. Like he's been all over the place with his performances and skills as a filmmaker. He's just great in this movie though.
Yeah.
Like he plays this dumb douchebag really well, and Rosamund Pike steals the show. Obviously, it is her movie.
She absolutely destroys it. Yeah.
Um, Everyone else is just kind of a tool for Fincher to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get the rare Tyler Perry, A as a man and B, um, not in a comedic role. Um,
Right.
Neil Patrick Harris is serviceably creepy as the ex-boyfriend.
Carrie
Carrie Coon
Coon.
is good as
Yep.
the sister. I don't really remember any of these other performances well. Boyd Holbrook has gotten bigger and bigger over the last like 5, 6 years. He's good in his like bit role as the hillbilly in the Ozarks.
Yes, I recognize this dude.
He's in a number of things. I know he's in Narcos.
It is the guy from Narcos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I
in
like him a
Narcos.
lot in
He's in
Narcos.
Logan. Uh, he's in something coming out, Justified, the new Justified show. He's the villain.
Does he have to wear sunglasses in everything he's in?
Yes,
I think so.
yes, contractually obligated.
I mean, one of his characters, it looks like he does have to, uh, but every other thing he's in, he just looks weird without them. All right. Um, yeah, Gone Girl is an excellent movie. I was really excited because I finished reading it in college, and then like 2 months later, the movie was coming out, and it was just like lucky. Um, just lucky timing, yeah. But obviously, like once I found out that Fincher was directing it, I was like really amped about it. All right, you want to backtrack to 2013?
Yeah, so shortly before Fincher made Gone Girl, um, he helped launch House of Cards, um, which by now is a very famous show. I mean, when it started, it was immediately famous and like obviously very high quality.
Yeah, it was
Um,
blowing up.
but the sort of the background on the show, House of Cards originally is a British novel and it was made into a British series. Um, the British series is really good, really short, easy to watch. I would highly recommend that one as opposed to the American version, which is goddamn well, we'll get to that, but yeah, basically Fincher, I think, was told to watch the BBC show. He loved it, and he's like, "Cool, let's make this into a TV show here." Fincher could tell, like he's on record 15 years ago saying like, "Yeah, I think this streaming thing is going to be the next big piece of film and TV." And he was saying that I like TV. I like that TV is starting to get good again. Like they're really allowed to let characters grow, bigger budgets, more time for shooting. A lot of things that I can't do in film right now that I want to help do in TV. Um, I think his exact quote, I felt for the past 10 years that the best writing that was happening for actors was happening in television. And so I'd been looking forward to doing something that was a longer form. So yeah, this is the first streaming show on Netflix, which is arguably the first big streaming platform. So
Yes.
Fincher, you could make the case, basically invented the first major bingeable TV show in the streaming era. Um,
I believe this also happened around the time where Netflix altered their that like button that they implemented where it was like watch next episode now, and it was like the countdown as well, so it just like kept you watching the
yes,
show.
yeah,
So like it was like, oh, do you want to see the other one? Here's 5 seconds. Oh shit, the next episode started. I guess I have to keep watching it.
yeah.
Yeah, so it just
Well,
hacks your brain that way.
well, we were super lucky that like we were on Netflix before it was a streaming service. I'm
Hmm.
sure plenty of other people were too, but when we were kids, we were getting DVDs.
In the mail, yeah.
And we had Netflix when it started to stream a very small amount of content. So I remember watching stuff like Monty Python was one of the first shows they put up. And then as soon as this show came out, I watched it. And I was pretty much uh, a devotee until the show went off a cliff. Um,
Yeah, I never finished watching it after I think season, I don't remember how many seasons there are of it.
6.
So maybe it was season 4 where I tapped out.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, for those uninitiated with House of Cards, stars Kevin Spacey as a evil sociopathic politician who helps to get some hack elected as president under the guise that he will be made the Secretary of State. And then that offer is rescinded. So he swears vengeance upon all of those who stopped him from getting his power. And so basically, by the end of season 2, he has manipulated his way into being president by doing illegal shit and murdering people and big braining all of these idiots. Um, the show is pretty compelling through the first 2 seasons. Fincher's role in the show is that he directed the pilot and the second episode. Other than that, he operated pretty much just as an executive, I believe, for the first 2 seasons, and then stepped away from the show, basically having birthed this baby and going, all right, you can go off in the world.
Yeah.
And obviously, then after doing that, went on to make Gone Girl.
Right, but his like you can definitely see his handprints all over it.
Yeah.
And they basically took his style and tried to continue it from the first few episodes and first 2 seasons. I did actually watch 5 seasons of it.
Okay.
And then I tried watching I think the first 2 of season 6 and I was like, nope, that's a hard pass for me. Because a woman would never be president of the United States, so that's why I tapped out there.
That's where it becomes fantasy.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I the there's a lot of just like dryness in that season, and they're doing things because they're doing things, and you're like, but we kind of lost the whole point of the show in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Is what it felt like. Obviously, Kevin Spacey was in hot water um, at the time and continues to be in hot water. But
What did he do now? Last I heard, he was acquitted of all charges. He is an innocent and free man, willing and ready to work.
Yeah.
He's honest. Honest. He's not a criminal, according to the courts.
His closets are clean.
And he's out of them.
Yeah, true.
Oh, boy.
Oh God.
Yeah.
But yeah, that definitely like influenced this show.
Well, the show was completely dog shit before he left.
Right. It
Uh,
was going down that hill.
every season's worse than the previous. Season 1 is the best because there's a lot of purpose for
Mhm.
that character. And then season 2 has to go to ridiculous and increasingly impossible lengths for Frank to become president. And then season 3 sees him struggle to be president and then have to face someone in an election. And then season 4 is just like elections aren't real, which, then that happened in reality. So I guess good on them. And then season 5 was just like literally a Game of Thrones. Like it just was fantasy and about nothing. And then, yeah, season 6, they can't have a goddamn crazy alleged rapist on the show. And then the show just lost its purpose entirely. And it was obviously a completely unnecessary season that doesn't really go anywhere, doesn't accomplish anything.
I'm
If you're
thinking
gonna
of a
watch the show,
really I'm thinking of a really inappropriate meme of Fincher where he's like the content of a story involves rape and he's like, sign me up. And then he's like, wait, this guy is a rapist? Not for me. Like, because essentially that happens all over the place in his career. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
he'd worked with
obviously
Spacey in the 90s.
in stories you're showing something more because of that. He's not condoning rape. Um, but yeah, very
No,
unfortunate
no.
for
Yeah, I would never levy the charge against Fincher that he uses violence in any form as an exploitation.
exactly.
He uses all forms of violence as a device to do something to the viewer, be it to scar them or draw them in or repulse them.
Yeah, his what's his quote again? That movies should scar.
Yeah, functionally, that's the quote where he's like, I don't really like movies with happy endings. I like a movie that scars. And then he cites, like, my favorite thing about Jaws is that I never went into the ocean again.
Yeah, amazing, amazing quote.
There's another great quote by Fincher where he says something like, basically, I just think you're all a bunch of perverts. With regards to his own audience and the larger, you know, viewership of films and media. Uh, which I think comes across in his films too, where he's a little disgusted at people who want to watch this shit. Even though he likes making it, and probably he himself likes to watch it. So,
Right.
nice try, David, but we're not falling for it.
But yeah, House of Cards and Netflix's streaming clearly both influenced like so many bits of cinema to come.
Yeah.
To name a few, like just that whole like political sort of like upheaval and people like manipulating the backstabbing, like yeah, Game of Thrones, obviously that happens in it from a plot perspective, but Succession is like um the most recent story that comes to mind with regards to House of Cards, in a lot of ways, where you have all these different characters vying for power, vying for control. They're doing all of these like political maneuverings. I'll scratch your back if you kill this person. Like all of this stuff.
Yes, but Succession takes itself way less seriously, is better written, better acted.
Yes, for sure,
Um,
for sure.
like and to give Fincher a lot of credit for the show, like he deserves credit for knowing where things were going, but this really isn't his show in any way.
No, it's
This is
definitely not.
mostly Bo
Hmm.
Williamon's show.
Hmm.
Sorry, he's got a weird last name too. And even that guy left at the end of season 4.
Yeah.
So he helped birth this thing, predicted where streaming was going to go. He has a great quote. I think at the beginning of the show, he said, "This is the future. Streaming is the future. TV will not be TV in 5 years. Everyone will be streaming." So he saw it coming too, and helped birth this thing.
Yeah. Next up is
Mindhunter.
Mindhunter,
Yeah,
right?
so we're not going to really finish David Fincher because neither of us have seen Mank, his 2020 film, or his work on the TV show Love, Death, and Robots. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, that is just a whoops, but
Love,
that's
Death, and
okay.
Robots I have full intention of watching. Um,
Well, he only directed one episode. I know he's just like a kind of a showrunner and producer.
yeah, people love this. I'm I'm skeptical. Um, I'm skeptical of its possible like just pure speculation. Um, or not speculation of it just being like sensationalized. Um, but we'll see. But anyway, back to Mindhunter. Mindhunter, I think, combines like almost all of his ideas into one sort of like platform, if you will, or like one because we talked about how like he does like the idea of it being like a serialized version and like a more long form story, and this show very much does that um, through the eyes of Holden Ford and Bill Tench, the two that are behind Nolan, and the one guy that's behind me. The guy that looks like a rhino is my favorite. Um, and then
Bill Tench.
Bill Tench is just kind of like an everyman that the actor pulls off really well.
He
Like,
starts off really generic and
yes,
cliched as like the grizzled cop who doesn't care, but then he is affected more and more, and that shows how it affects his family in a way that isn't necessarily new but feels fresh.
yeah, yeah, and I'm glad they have him as opposed to like whatever Dennis Quaid's son's name is, Harry Quaid or whatever.
Jack Quaid.
Same person. Jack Quaid. Yeah, I just
Harry
think
Quaid?
I was gonna say Randy, but I knew that wasn't it.
That's his racist older brother.
Yeah, correct. But anyway, they're both kind of like milk toast, run of the mill, like looking guys, like actors. I just think this guy's a lot better. Um, like I'm saying like if you were trying to cast this character, right? He would probably nowadays come up in that conversation and be like, "Oh yeah, like let's put Jack Quaid in there."
Not if it was a Fincher show, because everything I was saying about House of Cards not being totally Fincher's is wrong for this show. This show is
This show
Fincher's
is
show.
his. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is that like this puts all of those like dark ideas. Like you literally have serial killers, psychos, the dark like fringes of society that are affecting the general population, feeding off of like hysteria and fear and drastically affecting people, and then it affects the minds and the lives of these two guys who are trying to then get in the minds of these characters. Well, Bill is less about that, right? And Bill Tench is less about it, and Holden Ford wants to get into the minds of these guys in order to try to figure out how they work so that they can then either solve these but also avoid having these problems. And he sees it as an opportunity to learn more uh, to try to help society out, I guess, and help law enforcement out in the future, right? It's like an untapped um, area of, I guess you could say, sociology and psychology.
He created behavioral science as a tool for identifying serial killers and criminal profiling.
Yes.
So he
Yeah.
is like an integral part of like numerous, like the real guy. I forget his
Yes.
name. Um, like he basically created behavioral science, criminal profiling, different departments of the FBI. Not single-handedly. I mean, he worked with the Bill Tench guy and the psychologist Wendy Carr. I don't know what the real people's names are, but
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, I think all three of the leads are phenomenal in the show, and like you said, the show is like a touchstone for Fincher to explore like the beginning of our obsession with serial killers, but from how to catch them, not necessarily from just exploring them. And the show is like the perfect example of never showing, but still giving you all of the horror of serial killings.
Yeah. And it's
Because the
got that,
show has almost no graphic violence whatsoever.
I was gonna say it's got that heavy procedural aspect to it and like sort of character study of each of them. I just realized how much Anna Torv looks like Kate Blanchett. Wow.
A little bit.
Just in some of the shots in the show. Just never realized that before. Um,
I was used to Anna Torv because I watched Fringe.
Gotcha.
Um, and she's in a couple episodes of HBO's new hit series, The Last of Us.
Yeah, I saw that.
Don't watch it.
Um,
Terrible show.
oh God.
Nah, it's not terrible. It's just mediocre. Anyway.
Yeah, Mindhunter is a really enjoyable show. I'd say there's like one or two episodes in each season that I'm not the biggest fan of. But the casting that is done for each of the serial killers is great. And you get the echoes of like so many of his other works in this show. Like obviously Zodiac comes to mind.
Mhm.
There's just a number of scenes that are like really off-putting because of how like forward the serial killers are with what they're thinking and everything, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, that is seriously messed up. But then also where you're with um Holden and he's in a situation that he should not be in, and you're like, dude, you gotta go, like you gotta get out of there, man. Like similar to Jake Gyllenhaal when he's in the basement with that guy at like near the end of
Mhm.
Zodiac, and you're like, no, no, sir, like get out of there. And Fincher does a great job of building that suspense and then just like crescendoing that into a pot that boils over. But thankfully he gets out.
Yeah, so Fincher directed 7 of the 19 episodes in this show.
Hmm.
And he worked primarily with the writer for most of the show is Joe Penhall, who's also credited as the creator. So he's the other guy who should get a lot of credit along with Fincher for making sure that this show got off the ground.
Got it.
There were a handful of other directors who did episodes. For the most part, there were only like 6 or 7 directors. Season 2, Penhall, I think, was barely involved in the writing.
Okay.
Which I think shows the writing's a little weaker in season 2.
For sure.
And sadly, this show did not finish its narrative by any stretch of the imagination. It felt like it was just getting its feet underneath it, and then it was postponed.
Yeah.
And Netflix kept like dicking around and giving Fincher weird information and like teasing people by saying like we're almost ready to start season 3. And then at some point Fincher was like, yeah, they just fucking canceled the show and never told me or anyone else.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is a classic streaming service, specifically Netflix
Yeah.
move, where they just want to crank out content to get the money, and then once it feels like they don't care about the artistic merit, or they don't care about like the finality of a show as much, like the lasting effect, like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They just care about gotta make more content.
well,
And
the way that
the other thing is, sorry, this is probably where you're going, is that the cost of it would continue to rise, and they aren't willing to pay more
Yeah.
for successive seasons.
Yeah, every TV show, the next season's more expensive than the last, because that's just the way that all TV works.
Yep.
And this one specifically was a problem. They would have had to pay all three actors more money, probably Fincher more money.
Yeah.
So yeah, they axed it because yeah, Netflix is notorious at this point for producing shows with successful first seasons, decent sophomore efforts that show promise of a hit third or fourth season. And then
Hmm.
they axe them right there because they don't want to spend the money to get to it.
Yeah.
They've done it repeatedly over and over again. In general, House of Cards and Mindhunter are inarguably two of the best shows on Netflix,
For
like
sure.
of original Netflix content. I could probably name 3 or 4 others that I think are anywhere even near the quality of these two shows.
Yeah.
And that's one show where half of it is very bad, and this show that never even got to, take flight and get to, um, what would have been, I think, its peak. Like it is great. These 19 episodes, like you said, probably 15 are really, really good.
In the words of Cassius from Julius Caesar, it was the snake, the adder was crushed in its shell. Yeah. Unfortunately, I
Yeah.
didn't realize it was based on a 1995 true crime book.
Yeah.
By John Douglas and Mark Olshaker, and also that Charlize Theron is an executive producer of it, which is
Hmm.
surprising. I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I believe John Douglas is the fella who invented a lot of the criminal profiling stuff.
Gotcha.
He didn't invent it. I mean, it existed before him, but it was because of the work he did
He
in the
innovated it.
70s and 80s.
I
That
see.
it basically is portrayed by Jonathan Groff. Uh,
Yeah. So then, I mean, in sort of wrapping uh things up here, I mean, Fincher continues to do music videos and ads. Like 2021, he's listed as an executive producer for Anheuser-Busch Let's Grab a Beer video. Um, is that
yeah, I
black
don't.
enough for you? He's the producer of, which is a
Mm,
Netflix movie.
yeah, I don't give a fuck about any of that.
Um,
Um,
and Love, Death, and Robots, he's the executive producer of.
I am
Um,
interested in this one thing he did that's apparently on Netflix, just called Vor.
yes,
Um,
it's a TV series about like cinema, right?
yeah, but the episodes all like it's as if they were written to appeal to me. Uh,
I saw Jaws.
yeah, the first one's about Jaws. Second one is about Park Chan-wook's Lady Vengeance. Um,
Oh shit.
yeah, third one's about Lawrence of Arabia and exploring how Lawrence of Arabia is linked to like Goodfellas and classic gangster movies. Episode 5 is literally just about The Sopranos.
Shit.
Um, and episode 6 is about Walter Hill and his film 48 Hours and systematic racism in film.
Hmm.
So yeah, this stuff sounds fascinating, and Fincher is just like I think like the executive who made sure it got pushed through on Netflix. So
I
if
believe
nothing
it's
else,
I believe it's pronounced voir. I don't know how you said it, but voir.
yeah, I don't respect the French language. So
Voir.
nice try, but I'm gonna pronounce it vor,
Voir.
even though vor
Voir.
even though vor is another thing much much worse.
Oh,
Um,
vor.
vo ear. Let me get a pronunciation up in here.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a goddamn frog word.
Yes, obviously, look at it. It's
Vua.
it's
Vua.
it's noir, but with a V. So he ha you just couldn't take listening to the French anymore. He he has a movie coming out this year, right? The Killing, or what's it called?
The killer.
The Killer. Got it.
Killer. Yeah, so we'll probably do that. once it releases, which I believe it will release on Netflix.
What the
So-
hell?
Hmm?
He's an executive producer for Chinatown, which is a TV movie. The prequel to the title movie, Chinatown. Yikes.
Yeah, that's where it's tough with the executive producing stuff, because sometimes it means that he helped get it made, and other times,
Someone was like, "Hey, bud, I got an idea," and he's like, "Here's some money," or like, "Here, yeah, let's go for that." Yeah,
who
I mean,
knows?
quite a director. He's probably one of my favorites that are still working right now, and I will watch everything, every movie that comes out by him. His TV
Mhm.
shows, right, are iffy, like we said, with his executive producing. But
That's more of a problem of TV, though.
yeah, I was really sad that Mindhunter wasn't renewed, because I did really like that show. But such is life.
Such
Yeah.
is TV,
Such is
specifically.
TV life.
Yeah,
Yeah, that wraps everything up.
I think that about covers it. Yeah, definitely one of the best American filmmakers working today. I look forward to his next movie.
Absolutely. I think it'll come out this next year.
I don't remember if we mentioned it, that because we talked about how he started as a music video guy. He did start before that as like a matte photographer
Mm.
of matte paintings. And I bring it up now specifically because he worked on Return of the Jedi and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Oh shit.
Which is always fun to bring up, that he just very casually was working for Spielberg in the early 80s. And that uh, maybe that's why he's so good, is because his initial tutelage was under an OG.
Yeah. Great way of closing it out. Catch you all in the next one.
Oh, and we should probably watch Mank at some point.
Probably. Yeah. It's just like not a movie that interests me. It's not at the top of my list because it's like it's a biopic of a movie that I've already seen 5 or 6 times that I watch with increased diminishing returns, or decreased returns. Yeah. So great cast. It's just like not something. I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's just not something that's.
Doesn't have the zhuzh, doesn't have the it factor.
Yeah, I need like 3 to 4 different people to recommend something like that to me. Like, no, like you gotta watch it. And I'm like,
This is how many people have recommended Mank to me. So
exactly. That's what I'm saying. All right. See you on the next one.
adios.